On a night when millions expected fireworks and fame, two quiet voices stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage with nothing but a prayer. No flashy costumes, no big promises, just faith, fear, and a song the world was not ready for. Before the final note faded, Simon Cowell had tears in his eyes, the audience was on its feet, and one performance changed everything. If stories of hope, struggle, and miracles move you, subscribe now, because this is not just a performance, this is a moment that touched the world. The America's Got Talent stage in 2025 was brighter than ever, but behind the lights, the pressure felt heavier. Backstage, performers whispered their last prayers, warmed their voices, and rehearsed their smiles. Among them stood two Filipinos, a man and a woman, dressed simply, hands clasped together, eyes closed. They were not celebrities. They were not viral stars. They were a duo bound by faith, loss, and a prayer that had carried them through the darkest moments of their lives. Their names were Mateo and Lila. In the Philippines, they were known only in their small coastal town, where electricity sometimes failed, storms often destroyed homes, and hope had to be rebuilt again and again. Mateo had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, while Lila worked as a volunteer at a small church, helping children who had lost parents to illness or poverty. Music had never been their plan. Music had been their refuge. Years earlier, their lives collided in tragedy. A powerful typhoon tore through their province, flooding streets, ripping roofs from homes, and turning night into chaos. Mateo lost his younger brother that night, swept away by rising waters. Lila lost her mother, who refused to leave their home because she believed it was her duty to stay and pray for the neighbors. In the weeks that followed, grief filled the air heavier than humidity. Words failed. Comfort felt impossible. It was inside a half-damaged church, surrounded by broken pews and candlelight, that Mateo first heard Lila sing. She was not performing. She was praying through melody, her voice trembling but sincere. Mateo joined softly, not intending to harmonize, but the moment their voices met, something shifted. Others in the church stopped crying. Some lifted their heads. In that broken space, their prayer became a bridge between pain and hope. They began singing together every Sunday, not for applause, but for healing. People came just to listen. Fishermen, mothers, children, even those who had lost faith sat quietly as the duo sang prayers passed down through generations. One song, in particular, stood out. A prayer sung in both Tagalog and English, asking for strength, forgiveness, and light in the darkest waters. That song would eventually travel farther than either of them ever imagined. A volunteer from an international aid organization recorded one of their church performances and posted it online, never expecting more than a few views. But the world was listening. Comments poured in from people who didn't understand the language but felt the emotion. Messages arrived from nurses, soldiers, grieving parents, and lonely strangers who said the song felt like someone was praying for them. One comment came from an unexpected place. An audition producer for America's Got Talent. At first, Mateo and Lila thought it was a mistake. They had never been on a plane. They barely owned passports. The idea of standing on an American stage felt impossible, almost disrespectful to their humble beginnings. But their church encouraged them. Their town raised money for airfare. Children pressed handwritten notes into their hands saying, "Sing for us too." Flying to the United States felt like stepping into another world. Tall buildings, endless highways, unfamiliar faces. But the fear they felt was nothing compared to what awaited them on stage. Standing behind the AGT curtain, they could hear the crowd, loud and impatient. Mateo's hands shook. Lila whispered the same prayer they had sung after the typhoon, the one that had carried them through loss. When they stepped out, the judges smiled politely but cautiously. Simon Cowell leaned back, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Heidi Klum asked about their background. How did you meet? Why AGT? Mateo answered honestly, "We are not here to win. We are here to pray with the world." The audience murmured. Simon raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to sing?" Simon asked. Lila took a breath and said, "A prayer." There was a pause. Simon nodded slightly, clearly unsure. The music began softly, no heavy backing track, just piano and breath. Lila started alone, her voice fragile, almost trembling, singing about fear and loss. The crowd leaned in. Mateo joined in the second verse, his deeper tone grounding the melody. Their harmonies were not perfect in a technical sense, but they were real, raw, and aching with truth. As the song built, something changed in the room. People stopped shifting in their seats. Phones lowered. Judges leaned forward. The prayer moved from sorrow to hope, from asking to believing. When they sang the line about holding on even when the water rises, Simon's face changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes glistened. The final chorus came in both English and Tagalog, their voices rising together, not shouting, but lifting, as if offering something sacred. The last note faded into silence so deep it felt unreal. For 2 full seconds, no one moved. Then the theater erupted. The audience stood as one, cheering, crying, clapping above their heads. Heidi wiped tears from her face. Sofia Vergara covered her mouth, visibly emotional. Howie Mandel stood and applauded, shaking his head in disbelief. Simon Cowell did not speak right away. He looked down, took a breath, and then looked back up at the duo. "I've heard thousands of singers on this stage," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "But I have never felt something like that. That wasn't a performance. That was a moment. And yes, you got me." The crowd roared. Mateo and Lila held each other, overwhelmed, tears streaming down their faces. They had not planned for this. They had only planned to pray. 4 yeses came quickly, but something even bigger followed. Simon stood again and pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down as the duo collapsed to their knees, sobbing. In that instant, 2 people from a small Filipino town became a symbol of hope for millions. But the journey did not become easier. As the competition progressed, pressure mounted. Critics online questioned whether prayer belonged on a talent show. Others accused them of emotional manipulation. Mateo struggled with anxiety, fearing they were dishonoring their faith by competing. Lila lost her voice briefly before the semi-finals due to stress. The night before their next performance, they considered quitting. They prayed together, not for success, but for clarity. That night, Lila dreamed of her mother, smiling, telling her, "Sing without fear." They returned to the stage stronger, choosing not a grand anthem, but a softer prayer, reminding the world that faith does not need permission. They did not win the season. But they won something greater. Their performance became one of the most shared moments in AGT history. Churches, hospitals, and shelters played their song. Simon Cowell later said in an interview that it reminded him why music matters, not for charts, but for connection. Mateo returned to teaching. Lila continued her work with children. They recorded their prayer professionally, donating proceeds to disaster relief in the Philippines. They never became superstars. They became a reminder that sometimes, the quietest voices carry the loudest hope. And that one prayer, sung from the heart, can touch the world. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope today. And tell us in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching this video?